All right, it looks like we are recording. Okay, I am now here with Paul Shapansky. Paul is the CEO of Trinity Development Partners. Paul, thanks for joining us.
Nice to be with you today, Brian. Thank you.
Paul, I put the message out on this as we were talking before. This project and the ability for people to participate in something like this has been very well received. We're already getting some early questions, but we wanted to kind of address things on a high level, let investors kind of peek behind the curtains of everything that we've been doing on this. One thing I like to share is basically how did this opportunity originate? I mean, we have 50 plus acres right outside one of the hottest communities in the country for senior living. What happened here? Was this an inside track with a broker, direct to seller? What?
It was not a quick process. It was a long process. It started over 3 years ago, back in 2021, in early 2021. So it's more like 4 years ago. And it was a contact, one of our partners, Max Shaw, who's one of our sponsors. You'll see him on the team. Max had a friend who's a realtor in that market, has been there a long time, commercial realtor. And that realtor had a lot of contacts. This current property we're talking about has been owned by a fellow, Mr. Elijah Bailey and his family, him and his wife, and he's coming up on his 80th birthday pretty soon. But he was kind of at the point where he's owned this land. He was thinking he was going to do something with it. He was planning to build a new factory. He's been in the manufacturing business of cabinets for most of his career. And he bought this property many years ago off a church, I believe, and paid a very nominal amount for it. But over the years, he always had ideas to develop it. Max and his realtor partner brought in a group that said, look, we will develop this and help you put this together. You own the land, but we're going to go in and apply for a PUD, a planned unit development, which will identify certain parcels of land that we can develop different types of property. The hotel, the multifamily piece, medical office building, potentially self-storage, potentially condominiums, ALFs, those types of things. So they put together a comprehensive plan. They spent a lot of money on lawyers, engineers, architects, environmental people. And through that, they came to a point where they had the PUD in hand, but then they were looking at, all right, the next step is we have to develop this project, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And the owner at his age said, you know what, this is not something I should fund. I need to sell it, and why don't you go and you buy it and take it over? So Max and a couple of groups tried to fund it and put it together over the next couple of years. They were not successful in it. Brian had met me roughly a year and a half ago and told me briefly about this project in Lady Lake they were trying to do, and Brian had been involved on the funding team, I believe, for a short time. And that's the first time I got to look at it. And so from there, we put it together. We went in and made an offer to buy it. And they had, I should back up, I missed one step. There was a contract put on the land for $12 million with Max and his team, but they weren't able to fund that. They couldn't pull it together. So when we were going in just over about a year ago, we started negotiating. I think we got it under contract in April originally last year, but we were negotiating the purchase price, and we were estimating that it was going to cost us less than 12, but we were thinking maybe in the 10 range. We put together an offer, and at the last moment, one of our partners, Amar, decided he wanted to make sure he didn't overpay. He put the number in at 8 million and was shocked when they signed it and sent it back. So it took that whole process to get to the point of how we but it was working with the original landowner through a potential development project, him deciding he's too old to do it himself, and then needing to find a new owner. And it took our team to be able to put it together. And frankly, Trinity Development Partners was very key part of getting the funding partners like Eisenberg,
Right.
the senior loan in place with us and the entire development project plan. I think we were kind of the missing piece to make it happen.
So this is something that we purchased yesterday, finally closed on this deal. We buy it for $8 million. In that time period, we have JVs in place with other operating partners. Part of that process was getting appraisals for each individual parcel in that 50 acres. Some of those appraisals are at $24 million.
Yes.
To kind of let investors know how much of a steal price we got these 50 acres for. What was the motivating factor that had the seller just sign for $8 million? Where, like, do you know what was going through his head? And
well, I know he was sick when Max was trying to do the $12 million acquisition of it. One of the reasons that they couldn't put it together was the owner, Eli, got very sick and was in the hospital for several months. They honestly didn't know if he was going to come out of it alive. So I think that made him realize he needed to find a buyer quick.
Yeah.
He had people come to him and offer to buy certain pieces of it, individual, parcels, and he would not do that. He refused. He said, I want to sell it all together as one piece, because the project, the PUD was on the entire project. So I think it was probably him looking at his own mortality, is like, and he didn't want to go through this process of trying to find another qualified buyer when he had one, a good one in hand. And he checked us out carefully before he ever agreed to sign with us. And, we had to provide some capacity. I think we had to give him a letter that, our funding partners, even though we were buying it as a cash purchase, he still wanted to know that we were going to have the funds available when we were ready to close. So we had to qualify with him before he would actually sign the purchase and sale agreement.
Okay. Now, part of this investment, we're communicating to investors the value of having entitlements, zoning, permitting. There's been so much work done in that. Typically, that doesn't start until after purchase. We're way ahead of the game. For our new investors who don't really understand what an entitlement is, can you kind of add some color on what we accomplished, what that process was like, and maybe what's left to complete?
Right. Getting the PUD was a very significant event. That PUD is effectively, it's the zoning approval, which gives the entitlements to do the developments that we would like to do, as long as they meet the criteria defined within the PUD. And that's what provides significant value, because we can build up to 605 multifamily units as a multifamily portion. We can build square footage wise. We know with the medical and retail space on the medical portion, we can build at least 40,000 square feet of medical office. And we are probably going to put another 20 or 25,000 of associated retail on that site, which means we can do things like drugstore, a Walgreens, or we could do medical clinics, we could do a dental office, anything kind of related to medical. And so each of those individual parcels we have significant value. If we were starting now to get those approvals, Ryan, we'd be looking at 15 to 24 months at least. Get those approvals, and the cost would be between $500,000 and $1 million as a minimum to get those.
And the risk, because
Huge
without
risk.
having in place, there's an unknown now that would have been added to the deal that's been completely removed. And I like that piece of it, because
that's very big, because there's always risk. Are the neighbors going to stop you from doing what you want? You know, you've got residential sections on the west side of our property. The site below us or south of us is not developed. It's open land. And on the east side, we got, you know, that big highway with 38,000 cars a day running by us. And on the north boundary, there's really nothing there. There's raw land to be developed. But you know, it's kind of up to the commissioners and the city and the planning department as to what they really want to see on that site. We don't have that risk. You know, that has been completely defined and removed. So that's why the appraisals, when they came in and looked at what's the entire package worth, are in that $24 to $29 million range, based on having the highway improvements completed and the PUD with those uses in place.
Now, what is left to do as far as permitting, zoning?
The main thing is we have to go back in and define the master plan for the site, which means where are we going to put the internal roads, where are we going to put the services. They're actually there. The services are in the site, on the site. We have water, we have sewer, we have a lift station right on the northern end of the property, which is very, you know, significant because that can take a lot of time to get one of those installed. We also have electrical lines, you know, on the western boundary, across the northern boundary. So there's power there. There's fire hydrants on the site as well. So, you know, there's a lot of that work is there, but it's going to be the master plan layout, putting the internal roads in, putting the services in for water, sewer, utilities, high-speed, you know, internet to each of the parcels so that we can then start development work on each parcel. We'll also do some grading.
Yeah.
We'll do some overall rough grading on the entire site. Probably fill in, we can move dirt around. There's a lot of sand. It's primarily a sand base on the entire project site, which is good because sand is very easy to work with and it compacts, you know, very well, flows water off it very well. There's no wetlands on the site. We don't have any problems with, you know, ponds or rivers or creeks or, you know, any of that. So it's mainly that type of moving dirt, smoothing the site, getting the pads ready for various development sites. We won't do the entire final finish on grades and etc., but those will be finished on each individual project.
Okay.
But that work is going to take us about, we estimate, you know, roughly 9 to 12 months, and getting the approvals then will be just a case of going to the city with each specific site plan and showing this is the building we want to put here, getting that approved by the development department of the city. We also will have to have a ERP permit, which is from the Water Management District. But as I said, because there's no, you know, wetlands, that should be pretty straightforward. Fairly simple.
Now, and just to be clear for our investors, this is an opportunity to invest in the multifamily portion and development of this project. But we mentioned the other parcels and the other projects because of the harmonious relationship and how working together, it increases the value and demand for everything that we're doing. So, for example, you know, even though the investment is in the multifamily piece, we're going to be selling a portion of that land to pay off the debt used to purchase this, which, you know, allows us to go into this with very little equity. And the initial conversations before entitlements and permitting and these plans and JV agreements were in place, we were getting offers between 8 and 10, and now they could be closer to 10 to 12 million, and it's just a fraction of the land. I mean, we're talking 50% more than the purchase price of the entire thing.
That's right.
Which is incredible. What can we talk a little bit about the demand for housing, the Villages, Lady Lake? We went there together, and it was a sight to see of everything that's going on. You know, the Villages is the fastest and largest growing senior community in the world. One of them. I can't think of one that's larger and faster growing than this one.
It's the largest in the USA, from what we understand. Yes.
Yeah. And the demand is so high that people are on wait list to get into some of the social clubs, some of the different areas in the villages. And then senior communities outside of that are kind of non-existent, that aren't attached to assisted living or memory care, which for people that are in their 50s and 60s and even 70s, it's a little bit too far. It's like, I'm not there yet.
I'm still in good shape. Like a lot of the people you're talking about, kind of baby boomers or next to it, they're healthy. They may have retired, may have sold their home and their business, or the farm or whatever, and they want to live in a warm community, and they want access to all the social activities, but also for the outdoor activities. And they love to be in Florida where it's sunny, around all year long. And they don't have to deal with snow, and frankly, not a whole lot of rain. We do get summer showers, but the rest of the year is pretty spectacular. And that area has exploded because of all of that. 52 golf courses in that area, which is just hard to imagine there's that many. But when we drove around, we saw quite a lot of that. Beautiful countryside, big trees in a lot of areas, some on our site as well. And that has attracted people to that specific area of the villages. And that's why it's just been growing. Driving by on that new development side where we went together, that was incredible to see. I think it's in the range of 5,000 acres that's being developed in that new area on the west side of the villages.
Yeah.
And that's brand new. They're just in there with the big scrapers and the cats and sewer pipes and water lines, and amazing to see that. And they're putting, moving the trees around. Saw all those palm trees that they've got parked ready to plant. And so on our side, there's a wait list, as you said, to get into a lot of those communities. And frankly, in some of the independent living projects in that market, there's a wait list to get into them. Of 3 to 6 months, maybe even more than that. So yes, we think the demand is going to be very high for a brand new facility that's going to be as beautiful as this, with tremendous access to all these, activities and best shopping you could ever find within a 5-minute drive just to the north. So it's a great location. I don't know if I've ever seen better.
Now, talk about we're going to talk about the completion of this project, the timeline. In combination with Trinity Development Partners, we also have Bantam Global, Core Construction, Greystone Communities. For those that don't know, Bantam Global does modular design for a wide array of projects, from single family, multifamily, hotels, office buildings. I mean, they've completed 3 million in square feet of structures globally. Core Construction is our general contractor, 87 years experience, 1,200 employees. They're bonded and have insurance on performance guarantees. And then Greystone Communities is the property manager who's already, you're in constant conversations with them to get started on this. They have marketed over 40,000 senior residences, facilitated $9.9 billion in project financing across 42 states. They're now managing over 50 senior living communities nationwide. And we're projected as an earliest, to be leased up in 3 years. How these JV partnerships help us with the timeline completion, lower the risk. So it's sort of timing, risk, and the JV partnerships, and how those kind of came together, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
We were doing another project in the Space Coast, over on the east side of Florida by Merritt Island, where all the rocket activity is going on with Elon Musk and SpaceX. And that location that we had on the East Coast was something where we were originally planning to build a combination of concrete block construction and potentially looking at stick, built on the second, third level. But when we started to look at the overall cost of the projects, we thought, it seemed to us that it was expensive and the time to build was lengthy, and we felt that we did investigate other companies. We looked at a lot of modular companies. We started looking hard at modular because we felt the time to build was going to be reduced significantly.
Mm-hmm.
And we were pretty confident that the pricing was going to be lower than what we could do in any other method of construction. And that's how we discovered Vantum and ultimately signed an agreement to build that project with Vantum's assistance. Vantum as actually our partner in the project, including them writing a check to be our partner, a big equity check. And they bring together the relationship with Greystone Communities, because Vantum has developed a national partnership master agreement with Greystone to build the specific type of independent living 55 plus for active adults. So it's not an assisted living or memory care, any of that. It's strictly independent living, and it has tweaks and options that you can add into it. But that's where we brought Vantum to the table, and they looked at the site on Lady Lake, and I took both CEOs, co-CEOs of Greystone with the executive vice president of Vantum over there. And they looked around, they did the tour that we did, Ryan, and looked all around the site. And they came out of there and said, wow, this is absolutely something. We love this location, the demographics. They had the numbers before they went in, and they said the numbers are, off the chart for what they want to do for seniors there. So they were, yes, like 100%, we're in to do this project with you. So that brings us, a tremendous amount of strength, because we don't have to go, searching for a great property manager. We have it. We have the best contractor we could ask for in core construction.
Yes.
They're, a huge partner and a very well-respected partner in the market. And with Vantum, we have a relationship with them at the absolute top. I mean, we're dealing with the CEO and the executive vice president who built the company starting 30 some years ago. Yeah. And so we know them professionally, but more than that, we know them personally. They're good friends. And so that's a huge plus for us and gives us confidence that we're going to get the financing we need, the support we need. If we need help in a certain area, the contacts that these people have are at the highest levels. As you know, they're backed. Vantum is backed by very strong financial partners. The Breakthrough Energy Fund is Bill Gates, one of his investment funds. That's one of the partners. The Hunt family out of Texas is, a major partner. TEM Capital and Quadrant Fund are also some of the original investors in the business. They each have board members on Vantum board. So you have, the best of the best giving in advice and helping them grow the business. Just as a side note, Vantum's plan is to build 2 new major manufacturing plants every year for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I saw that.
Ultimately, they want to go to 20 plants across the U.S.
Okay.
So they want to be one of the dominant players in that market. And I think they got the right team to do it. And we're really, blessed to be able to have those people as our partners. And it reduces risk, shortens the time. We're looking at 18 months to build everything, where normally you might be looking at 36. And to get it leased up, a lease up in some of these is probably, you'd expect up to 3 years for lease up. We're going to be looking at half of that, 18 months, hopefully less. I think will be more like 12. But 485 units, you've got a lot of folks you need to put in the building. But
and will the leasing and management start as buildings are completed, or do they all get completed at once? And what would
it will be? I expect it'll be a phased approach. It'll come in, but it'll be staggered, probably 60 days. You'll start phase 1, 60 days later, you start phase 2, another 60 days, phase 3. So it'll be probably 4, I would estimate 4 phases to build 485 units, and the entire time frame will probably be in that 18-month range to build from number one to the last one. But they will be pre-leasing within, as soon as they start construction, we will people on site, with demo units. We'll probably put actual demo units at the leasing office and show them. They can walk in and see them. And that way, we'll pre-lease probably within 3 to 4 months of occupancy. We'll have people in there to pre-lease everything.
Yeah, the ability to pre-lease as you're completing the builds and the rest of the project is huge, and something that definitely works in your advantage. We mentioned something, performance guarantees, bonds with core construction. There's also, people still think about inflation, rising construction costs. How do all those things work to lower our risk in this? And
well, one of the advantages we have is that Greystone has a lot of relationships that they can bring to help us, in pre-planning. And they've seen so many of these units built across the country. They can kind of give us, a roadmap of things to look out for. Vantum has, again, their planning is long-term. They're planning 24 months up the road in terms of what they're going to build. And in terms of materials costs and things, they're building a new plant in Florida that will produce the panels that are used in the modular manufacturing. And so that cost, frankly, when they get the new plant in place and it can produce the volumes that we're going to see, I think honestly their cost is going to go down, not up, because the automation they're going to have and the ability to produce that product in high volume, they'll lower their costs significantly from what they're doing today. Certain things like cement prices, move up and down with the market. That's not going to have a major impact on the units that we're putting in place. We will have some cement in the, footings and foundations and things like that. But otherwise, I don't see inflation having, a huge impact on our costs expected through the project.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point that we're JVing with the supplier of most of the materials. Like we have a JV agreement with the source of the materials, which is huge. Everyone's always thinking about, when they think about Florida, they think about insurance, especially multifamily operators. It's a big piece. I think stabilized, we put it at $2,700 a door. As the cost. Anything you want to talk about insurance? And
insurance is going to be interesting, and the reason it's going to be interesting is that most of the big insurance carriers aren't that familiar with this type of construction using modular. They expect you to fill out, their applications, and the boxes always include, how much are you going to spend on framing contract? How much are you going to spend, on roofing contractors? What's your electrical contractors going to be? And you have to actually sit down and talk with them and say to them, this is not what you're used to. We're not going to have the risks in terms of weather delays. We don't have that issue. We bring these units in on flatbed trucks, special trailers, which actually are owned by Vantum. They have their own logistics company. They move all these units on their own special trucks. So they plan the whole delivery, the logistics, getting the boxes on the site, and they have the cranes and install them on the, foundations that are there. And all of that, the insurance carriers have to understand this is just a very different animal. So we've been spending a lot of time already with major insurance agencies. Gallagher is our current agents. AJ Gallagher, huge company. They have relationships with all the big carriers, Lloyd's of London, and we are frankly going to make sure that we can educate the carriers so they understand the cost of insurance should be significantly less on us as we build it. But even more importantly, the risk of, tornadoes, hurricanes, that type of risk in a windstorm in Florida, of course, we expect that. But these have demonstrated, in 8.3 level earthquakes, for example, in South America. The before and after pictures are incredible. The Vantum product is unscathed. There's not even a crack in a wall. And the way they're designed, the entire structure just floats on the foundation.
Yeah.
Same with windstorm. They have, hurricane glass in the windows. They have the wall construction is far stronger. The panels are cementitious board. You can see that on the Bantam site. But those units, when they're locked together and installed and they're 3 or 4 stories high, they're stronger than, they take less damage than a cement structure.
Yeah.
And they've got pictures of them going through hurricanes in South America, in North America, and the roof hasn't even come off. It's like Cat 5 storm went through, didn't take the roof off.
Now, it's important to note too, when we're talking about new development in the rent premiums for this asset class, this demographic, the expenses are much smaller than what we've traditionally presented to investors, like classy multifamily, the value add, where the expenses make up a much greater portion, including insurance. So after stabilization, even with the debt service on the construction loan at 9%, we're at, once we're leased up, the cash on cash is 10% for investors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Operating expenses aren't 50%; they're more like 23% of our gross income. So there's a huge buffer on cash flows once this is leased up, where even if insurance rates did tick up or other costs did tick up, I mean, the cash is there to support all of it. And then when we refi, and once we get the 90% occupancy, we refi with Freddie Mac, and we get into a normal rate, it only helps our efforts further. It involves a return of capital at that point.
Yes.
And that people ask, like, well, when should we see return on capital, return of capital? And maybe we could talk about exit plan too while we're at it. But all that, when we start completing, we start doing the lease up, that's when the cash flows start coming in. That happens in years 3. So nothing exciting. And then all of a sudden it's 10% cash on cash. And then you do the refi, then that's just it's
all gravy after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And the refi, is going to generate a significant amount of cash for us to return capital to the investors, pay them some of the comp that comes along with that. And I think that, we're seeing the numbers we've looked at, we could return all the investor capital. We could pay off a significant amount of, if we use PACE funds, we could pay off a significant portion of that if we wanted to. Based on where rates are, we may not. But if we do a refi, it may be at an advantageous price where we can pay off the entire amount of the PACE funding. That the decision we'll make then. But I think, as you said, the thing that's going to give us a huge value at exit is that the cap rates utilized in calculating the value. If you sell this to a major, institutional buyer, which is what the exit would be, they're going to look at buying the entire project based on the cash flow with a cap rate. And that cap rate is going to be significantly better because of the type of buildings we have, LEED certified, completely sustainable, resilient. They have the energy efficiencies. The operating costs are low, just as you said. And the premium we get on the cap rate, we generally see a reduction of at least 50 basis points against whatever the market cap rate would be for a non-LEED certified, energy efficient project. So if you're looking at a 5 cap, and that's a good number for a lot of markets, in our case, we'd be looking at a 4.5 cap. That adds a lot of value at the exit. And so that's one of the other advantages at the point where, we decide to take an exit. This is going to be a project that brings a very strong premium at the exit point.
Yeah. And those cash flows allow us to be patient for the right exit. And let's talk about the exit just a little bit more. We're showing on our timeline, we show 3 years. We have to come up with some timeline because that's when we can do a refi. We can
Yes.
exit if we want to,
Right.
but it's hard to know what the market's going to look like in 3 years.
Yeah.
But we have the ability to wait for.
You can be patient because we're going to have that cash flow you mentioned, at least 10%, cash on cash. And frankly, if interest rates are trending in our favor, they're heading down, cap rates are compressing.
Yeah.
You want to wait till they're in the area where, you basically are ready to pull the trigger, and you think that you've kind of maximized the return at that point. And then we don't believe in being really greedy, so we don't want to take the very last dollar off the table,
Right.
and wait too long and realize that we were too greedy and we didn't get the best exit. So we would be reasonable in looking at the options and select the one that makes the most sense, and it's going to give us hopefully better numbers than anything we might even have thought of.
Yeah, and it's one of the big benefits of offering this up to my investor network, our investor network, is that it gives us that flexibility. Whereas opposed, if we did this through pref equity group or a senior fund, they have hard exits. And whether the market's good or not, it forces us into an unfavorable position. Whereas we have a huge advantage now with our investor network doing it this way. So year three, end of year three, we should be done with the lease up or there. During year three is when we'll most likely start distributions. After year three, we can look at the refi options, which would result in a return of capital event. And then we see what the market's doing as far as a complete sale, complete exit to get out of this project in order to get the capital back and get the returns that we're projecting.
Yes.
Paul, thanks for getting on with me today, and thanks for introducing yourself to all the good people.
Brian, thanks for all your help. You're a great friend and a great partner to have for us. So we're very pleased to work with you, and thank you for all you're doing.
Pleasure. Thank you, Paul.